come to the committee.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. I'm here to present AB 1705, which reduces the likelihood that contraband will enter our local jails by allowing law enforcement to use body scanners to search for drugs or weapons during the booking process. The flow of contraband into our county jails poses a great risk to the health and safety of the individual, staff, and other inmates. This bill allows law enforcement to use scanners to reduce these risks. Scanner technology allows the booking process to be less invasive in cases where reasonable suspicion calls for a strip and body cavity search. We have made amendments to address concerns about privacy and the health of pregnant women. These amendments have ensure that officers avoid scanning pregnant women and that the person viewing the display screen of the body scanner be of the same gender as the detainee. Here with me today are Corey Zalzillo of the California State Sheriff's Association and Lieutenant Wayne Billowit of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department to testify.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Corey Salzillo here on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association. We're the sponsors of the bill. As the Assembly member noted, this is we consider this very technical cleanup. The bill clarifies that body scanners can be used during the booking process when someone is arrested for a misdemeanor. Current law permits the use of pat-down searches and metal detectors, as well as thorough clothing searches. This bill simply adds the ability to use a body scanner. The technology we feel is less invasive than a pat-down or certainly a strip search. The technology is mainly low-dose X-ray in nature. And as the member noted, we have taken amendments to address concerns about ensuring not scanning a woman who is pregnant, as well as ensuring that a person who is viewing the display of the scanning image is of the same sex as the person who's being scanned to protect privacy. Those issues were raised in the Assembly, and we addressed those here before you today. The bill had overwhelming bipartisan support in the Assembly, and we respectfully ask for your aye vote today.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Lieutenant Wayne Billowit on behalf of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. We acknowledge and fully support the bill based on what Mr. Salzillo said, and thank Assemblyman Rodriguez for introducing this. We feel this is a very important way for us to help reduce incidents of contact between law enforcement and inmates in a negative way. So this would be a very positive help for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, Matthew Seiberling on behalf of the Association for Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs, the Los Angeles Police Protective League, and the Riverside Sheriff's Association, all in support. Thank you.
Nicole Wertelman on behalf of the Orange County Board of Supervisors in support.
Good morning, Chair and members. Denisha Boatner on behalf of the California State Association of Counties in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Others in support? Speakers in opposition to the bill?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members. Micah Doctoroff on behalf of the ACLU of California. We have not opposed this bill outright or opposed the use of body scanners generally. However, we have opposed the bill unless amended to address certain privacy concerns. We recognize the amendments that the author has taken and certainly think that they improve the bill. However, they do not address all of the concerns that we have. AB 1705 would permit a person arrested and taken into custody for any misdemeanor or infraction to be subject to a full body scanner search. Body scanners have been the focus of much public debate in recent years. Chief among the concerns are those related to the images produced by some of the body scanners, as certain body scanners, namely those that display a person's soft tissue, have the ability to produce strikingly graphic images of the searched person's naked body under the person's clothes. This type of scanner permits those viewing the image to see the person's private body parts, including the size and shape of the person's breasts and genitals, or evidence of a mastectomy. Given the graphic nature of these images produced by these scanners and the corresponding level of intrusiveness, such scans have been deemed virtual strip searches. As you can imagine, virtual strip searches are particularly concerning in the jail setting where sexual abuse and harassment of inmates is unfortunately a common occurrence. With these specific concerns in mind, the legislature very carefully put strict limits and protections in place to ensure that individuals who have been arrested for minor misdemeanor and infraction offenses are not arbitrarily subjected to unnecessary strip searches. Unlike current law, which only allows strip searches if there is reasonable suspicion to believe that the person is concealing a weapon or contraband, or if the person has been arrested for an offense involving weapons or violence, this bill would permit body scans of every person arrested for any infraction or misdemeanor. Likewise, unlike current law, which requires that the search be conducted in an area of privacy, this bill provides no such protections. Unless these issues are addressed, we remain in opposition to the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions or comments from members of the committee? Senator Leno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question for the author. I'm looking at the bill, and I see there are a number of definitions in it: body cavity, physical body cavity search, strip search, visual body cavity search, but I don't see one for body scanner, and I do know, as the ACLU has just reiterated, that there are different kinds of body scanners. Can you tell us what your intention here is, and do we need to be more specific in the bill as to exactly what kind of body scan you intend?
I'll defer to Corey. He can tell a little bit more the detail of the type of scan and why it would be necessary.
Okay. We haven't defined the specific technology that's in use because there are different types of technology. I can tell you that the prevailing technology in use is low-dose X-ray. So it is more of an X-ray. It does show more than an X-ray, sort of amorphous shapes of the body. The concerns I think about the more visual video type depictions, I think were more prevalent when the TSA was using those machines 3 or 4 years ago. And those are, to my knowledge, not the overwhelming use that are in jails, that it is more of the X-ray. And that's why we did take the language that says whoever's viewing the display, because you go through clothed, so it's not a situation where you would be unclothed or subject to a physical cavity search, that when you're going through the scanner and that whoever can see the display has to be of the same gender for the specific privacy concerns.
And also, Senator, just to add, this is just an additional tool. It doesn't mean that every person will be body scanned as well.
So I understand the concern of prescribing specific body scan equipment in the bill, but given the uproar over the TSA, very detailed body scanning, might the bill be stronger if it were to say, without prescribing what exactly can be used, clarifying what can't be used? So the very detailed, I don't know the terminology here, but the very detailed body scan image that caused the concern at TSA, if that's not what you're intending to use, why don't we spell that out and say that won't be used?
And through the chair, I would say that I think with the privacy protection that we have installed, that I don't think we need to be that prescriptive, understanding the distinction between not saying you can't use brand X or technology X, but I'm not really sure how we would describe it. And again, with the privacy considerations, that's why we put in there same gender. I mean, you're not unclothed, and so anybody who's viewing it is going to be of that same gender, and it's not as invasive as a physical strip search or a body cavity search, and that's why it is different than the distinction made in current law that was in response to Supreme Court.
So we're both struggling for lack of terminology, but I think we're both agreeing that there was a problem with the very detailed imaging used at TSA, that's not what you're imagining would be used in this.
I'm not aware of any jails that use that technology.
Okay, but that technology, whatever that technology is, the one you just referred to, that's what we're agreeing upon, right? That's not what you're intending to use. Why not just find out what that technology is and say that's not what you're going to be allowing for in use here, and not anything else that you are intending, but just to clarify. And I don't know that just saying same gender alleviates all privacy concerns. Who made that determination?
Well, that's the distinction that's in current law for a strip search or a cavity search, and that's what this is being likened to. I mean, we feel this is far less invasive than a pat-down, even. And a pat-down is permitted. A pat-down is permitted under current law for anybody who's being booked into a facility.
And would you say the same about the very detailed technology, that technology that we've made reference to earlier? Would you also say that's less invasive than a pat-down?
I would say it's less invasive. I mean, that's my personal representation. I think that's a personal distinction. I think doing this, whether you're in a jail or in an airport, fully clothed, to me is less invasive than being patted down.
Including the very detailed imagery that we referred to earlier?
Sure, because it is protected from the person who can view the image. It's not as if you're unclothed and then walking through where anybody can see it. The image that's visible is in a limited place and it's not accessible.
So tell me the harm. My last question, Madam Chair. Just tell me the harm then, and then in excluding the technology that we agree is not what you intend to use.
I don't know that there's a way to describe that technology in the statute, and to limit it, especially now that we have that protection, I think is unnecessary.
And final. Are we certain we can't identify and define that technology that we keep calling that technology?
I wouldn't say we're certain. I think we can certainly look at it and see if it's something that we can address in a way that does not overly restrict the use of the very successful devices that prevent
I think we're all in
contraband.
agreement in that. We don't want
Yeah.
to restrict
We can-
that which we want, but if there's a way for us to identify, and I don't know that it's impossible, that which we don't want, because we all agree what it is, and it had been used, so we know who to ask what it was, so we can define it, I think it just makes it better. I don't have any disagreement with where you're going with the bill. Just makes it a better bill.
We can certainly look into it.
Okay.
Well,
problem.
the bill is scheduled to go directly to the floor. So it's probably a discussion we should have, whether further definition would be helpful to the bill. I feel that we've worked very hard to limit and really to eliminate, if at all possible, strip searches, which are ways of humiliating and, in my view, often mistreating inmates or persons who are arrested. So what I need to know is, are these scanners different from what's used in the airport?
It depends on the airport, and it depends on the jail. I mean, there are different technologies.
Okay, then let me ask the ACLU, do you have a particular kind of scanner that you would eliminate, or where are we going here?
I mean, I think that our concern is less prohibiting a particular type of scanner, but where scanners that do depict this type of image are used, that the same protections and the same restrictions that are in place for strip searches be in place for the
They're
scanners.
same-sex and separate room, right?
But also that when those types of scanners, when those types of searches can be used,
Okay.
are in restricted circumstances, depending on the
Whether you
offense
fail
or
an ion scanner or some kind of a drug test, right?
So essentially, if the person was charged with a particular type of offense, or if there was particular suspicion or a heightened risk.
So this is a pre-booking decision on the part of law enforcement.
Madam Chair, just to clarify, it's once a person's been arrested, and it's during the booking process, that there is a distinction in current law right now that says that you may pat down, use a metal detector or a thorough clothing search on anybody that you have arrested and are booking for a misdemeanor or infraction. The law then makes a distinction pursuant to the Supreme Court case law that says if you have individualized suspicion that a person has a weapon or contraband, then they may be subject to a strip search or a cavity search. But the point of that was to, as you noted, not allow every single person being booked to be subjected to the invasive strip search or cavity search. We're putting the body scanner in the first part because it's not as invasive as a physical cavity search or a strip search where a person is unclothed.
Yeah, this is an interesting one for me because one of the questions we had about the contraband policies and practices in prisons was that why is it, if the concern is contraband, why is it only those arrested? What about visitors and staff?
The visitors don't have specific access to every person in the general population of the custodial facility, which the people who are being booked into eventually will. And I mean, again, the reason that this statute exists that describes the search procedures for people being booked is because the Supreme Court said you can't strip search everyone. And the statute was changed to reflect that, appropriately so, and that's why we have those protections. But again, this is specifically referring to those people who are being booked and who are going to be in direct contact at all times with other inmates.
Okay, so the contention isn't really the type of scanner or the private room or the same-sex viewer, because that's all been taken care of. The difference would be if there are particular circumstances necessary before the decision to use the body scanner would be used.
If I may, yes, I think for us, depending on the type of scanner, if it was the type of scanner that was used that does depict these types of images, we would want the same protections that are in place for a strip search, and for it to only be used in the circumstances under which a strip search is permitted. If it is the other type of scanner, one that produces a generic body image and doesn't raise those same privacy concerns, then we agree that it can appropriately remain in the same section that the author has placed it.
Okay. Then if I could just ask Mr. Salcido, what would be the problem of limiting to the kinds of scanners that we all go through every time we get on a plane? Is there a problem with that, do you think? I mean, again, back to Mr. Leno's comments, if you can describe it, you can usually put it in legislation.
I think if we had a description of the types of machines that the ACLU is concerned about, we could certainly take a look at that. There are different technologies. There are some X-rays that will show the outline of the body that's not as descriptive as what would appear to be more like a video. There are also technologies that use basically a glorified stick figure. It's not specific to a person. It's just a depiction of a body. And so I'm not sure what we need to take out, given the protections that we've put in. And again, we're not talking about a person being unclothed.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I'm just trying to fine-tune this to get it as carefully done as possible. Now, if this bill was going to appropriations, I would say, let's pass it today, send it to appropriations. Given that there seems to be a very small clarifying issue, which I would say only relates to the type of body scanner, I think everything else has been taken care of in there that should answer the ACLU's objections. That we ought to put this over for a week and see if you can't come up with an amendment, a clarification that specifies a particular type of body scanner that might not be included in this, because if we can simply move ahead with, again, what we all go through, some of our members at least once a week at an airport, I think that's a good thing and we ought to do it.
And I'm not under the impression that that's anything different than you go through,
Yeah.
or not you necessarily, because I doubt you fly here, but that any other member would go through on a weekly basis with not the same privacy protections that are in this bill.
Indeed.
For people who are being booked for a crime, who, and I would, so, okay.
Yeah. Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I certainly can appreciate the sensitivity, and we obviously want to have a scanner that has the appropriate definition to ensure that we can, inspect cavities without having to manually go in. And this is a very invasive process when you go in to have a manual cavity search. So I appreciate the sensitivity. I'm not sure where scanners are on a scale of 0 to 10, and 10 being very invasive and 0 not being invasive, but just getting enough information to make sure that somebody's not coming into a jail or a prison with contraband. Senator Rodriguez, I think you've done a very good job in thinking about this bill. I can tell you've put in the protections that are necessary, but just a couple of quick questions. Are the images going to be stored? Are they public information? Are there any contraindications besides pregnancy? In other words, pacemakers, people that have indwelling or implanted pumps in their bodies, can they make an issue of that as an exclusion if it's medically necessary? And will the scanners that we're talking about, will they be able to detect ingested contraband such as heroin and balloons, which is a problem, as we know, in our jails and prisons?
Well, I'm open to work with the staff on how we can best address it, but really, I think with some of the medical conditions, we're open to that. If the pacemakers and things of that nature becomes an issue with the scanner, obviously by no means we'd want to harm the individual any more than they would. So I don't think
what I might suggest is, through the chair, if this is going to be continued a week, that maybe you would address that with some health professionals, and maybe you put a health exclusion if somebody has a condition that would not be conducive to radiation, that they would be excluded from having to endure that.
I'll be open to looking at it, yes.
Okay, I think maybe this is what we should do then. Staff has asked if we could put it over for 2 weeks, which would give staff time to work on it, and it will go directly to the floor so that you won't have an appropriations or double referral problem. But with the consent of the author, I think we should do that, and I really do want to commend you for a very thoughtful piece of work and for moving in a very good direction, because the use of body scanners, I think, is the way to go as opposed to the more invasive approaches.
Yes, and really what we're looking at is obviously not only officer safety, but safety of other inmates in the jails, because we never know what can come in by any type of individual. So it's just another tool that's at their disposal to use if necessary, to make sure that we're not getting any type of illegal things coming into our jails, because that poses another issue as well, right?
Right. Okay. Right. Well, then, with the consent of the author, we'll hold this over for 2 weeks and work on clarifying language. Hopefully, we'll be on consent. Okay. Thank you very much. Assemblymember Chu, item 33.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senators, appreciate your consideration of AB 2820, which would strengthen current law to protect consumers from price gouging during a declared emergency. Current law is not supposed to allow price increases of more than 10% after emergencies declared by the governor, by our president, or other local governments, but unfortunately, the current consumer protections don't apply to man-made disasters, to leases longer than 30 days, or to towing or transportation services. Following the devastating Aliso Canyon gas leak, we saw unscrupulous individuals take advantage of loopholes to price gouge desperate residents. We saw landlords in nearby areas double or triple their rent. We saw towing companies that charged outrageous prices to residents who had to abandon their vehicles to flee to safety. This bill strengthens consumer protections after a state of emergency is declared by extending prohibitions against rental price gouging to include leases up to a year, prohibiting towing and transportation services from raising rates more than 10%, and applying these protections clearly to both natural and man-made disasters. I want to thank our Attorney General as well as consumer advocates for supporting this bill. To turn it over to our experts.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Sally Espinoza on behalf of Attorney General Harris, and I'm here in support of the bill. As the Assembly member noted, these are often situations in which Californians are already facing devastation and hardship, and this bill would go a long way in helping address those concerns of those who are facing those issues. So urge your support of this bill. Thank you.
Others in support? And speakers in opposition to the bill? Seeing and hearing none,
I'll move the bill.
the bill has been moved by Senator Anderson. Senator Leno.
Assemblyman, great bill. Great bill,
Thank you, Senator.
addressing a real problem. Just curiosity, the analysis does show the public defenders in opposition. Did they submit a letter? They're clearly not here today. And do we know what their issue was?
Well, they are here, but they didn't
okay.
speak.
Okay. I'm not looking for trouble here. It's a good bill. Just curious.
Good morning. We spoke with staff. We're going to be removing our opposition. We did not have an issue with the current form of the bill.
Good.
Thank you.
Glad to hear that. All right.
Thank you for helping to clarify that.
Yes, I was wondering too. I thought silence was consent, seeing the public defenders in the back of the room. But, okay, the bill has been moved. Would you like to close?
I respectfully ask for your support.
Please call the roll.
Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Anderson.
Aye.
Anderson, aye. Glazer. Leno.
Aye.
Leno, aye. Liu. Monning. Stone.
The bill is on call for the absent members.
Thank you, Senators.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Assemblymember Cooley with two items. Item 17, AB 1864, and item 24, AB 2228.
Correct. And I will, Madam Chair and members, I will start with AB 1864, sudden unexplained death in childhood. And to open on the bill, this is an interesting bill. I brought it forward my first year in the legislature. It was vetoed by the governor. And yet really the whole landscape of law in this area of sudden unexplained death has changed. So what I want to say in a moment, you're going to hear from my witness. But this week we have all reeled with the recognition of so many people who have lost people due to something that is senseless. That has sort of been on all minds. So this bill deals not just with something which is senseless, but something that's actually inexplicable, and the burden on a parent when they lose a child for no discernible reason. But before we get to that aspect of the bill, the law has changed in this area. 2 weeks after Governor Brown vetoed my bill in 2014, the CDC, the National Institutes of Health, entered into agreement with the University of California, acted with the State Department of Public Health, to establish a registry of sudden unexplained death in youth to improve the database nationally, to understand what is happening when a child under the age of 19 dies and there's no explanation. So we've moved forward on the data collection at the national level. Here in California, our own UC is one of the data collection agents. Then in December that year, the Congress passed a bill to, again, improve data collection. So this bill fits into this big movement to try to understand inexplicable death in youth. And this bill simply provides that, rather like how we treat infant death, sudden unexplained infant death, SIDS, for sudden unexplained death in youth, that the coroner would inform a parent of the importance of tissue collection. It also provides a protection against liability for the coroners. There can't be any legal consequences from how they handle that case. But so this is just a very narrow bill to deal with making sure that parents who face an inexplicable loss know that there is something they could do, something they can take out of that horrid situation that may affect other families and other loss. So that is the background. And today I have Sonia Winchell, who lost her son, Nico Winchell, from my assembly district, to tell her story.
Thank you, Sonia McCooley. Good morning.
Morning.
I prepared my statement, so I'm going to read directly because I'm nervous. Okay. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you about my firstborn son, Nico Winchell, and sudden unexplained death in childhood. Sunday, October 21st, 2012 was supposed to be just another day for Nico, a 15-year-old sophomore at Rio Americano High School and devoted jazz guitarist with the nationally acclaimed school jazz band. He had spent the night before at one of the many ongoing fall band fundraising parties, and Sunday morning he was to volunteer at the band car wash. Nico Nico never made it because sometime between 4 and 5 a.m. he died in his sleep. Instead of a joyous day helping his band community, our home became a crime scene, with first responders investigating and questioning our family. The chaplains arrived without any helpful advice except to drink a lot of water. They took his body away and then complete numbing silence. We were left alone, not a clue as to how a strapping, healthy, 6-foot-tall boy could just die in his sleep. That only happens to infants, we are told. Since we have no family history of SUDS, or had even heard of it, we were completely unaware of how to proceed. Thankfully, a friend who is a forensics pathologist called and informed us about SUDC. He told us that the coroner does not harvest DNA-rich tissue and that we'd need that for further investigations. None of this incredibly important information came from the first responders. In California, most families who are victims of SUDS are left without any ability to further the investigation into their beloved child's death. There is an incredibly short period to collect important data for SUD researchers. We were able to contact the coroner in time to request tissue and organ retention for future research. Most families bury this information with their child and are left to live their lives never knowing how or why their healthy child died, or if this will happen to any of their surviving siblings or future siblings. Because our friend intervened, we were able to supply SUD researchers at Boston Children's Hospital with valuable DNA information as well as organs for research. While we currently have some clues as to what killed our son, the investigation continues through the team. But even more importantly, our son's remains are aiding in research to prevent future tragedies. None of this help came from the death scene investigators. None. This first step is the most integral part of the research process. We are only asking that first responders, the most essential team, to advise the bereaved family and collect important data for SUD research, which is supported by the National Association of Medical Examiners. The harvesting of DNA tissue is currently done for infants under age 1. So do children over age 1 not merit the same consideration? With the passing of Nico's bill, AB 1864, you have the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of all children by aiding researchers diligently working to solve the riddle. Please vote yes for Nico's bill. Thank you. And this is my son. I want to bring a picture. Healthy strapping. Thank you.
Dr. Teskin?
Hi. Hi, good morning. I'm Dr. Teskan. I'm a medical geneticist at Kaiser Permanente. Medical geneticists are specialists who get referrals on patients with possible, potential, or known genetic disorders. Sudden unexplained death, SUD, is one of the referrals we would get. And these cases would be unexplained, no other medical reason to explain the death, and autopsy would be negative, no pathology found, and toxicology negative, and so it's left with the diagnosis of sudden unexplained death. And there is an ICD-10 code for it. You can simply Google it and find it yourself too. So there is an ICD-10 code for this death, which happens not so infrequently. Human genetics, genomics has improved, as we all know. So some of the cases that if we have DNA collected, then we can make a diagnosis. That percentage of what cases you can make diagnosis varies between 10 to 20%, but as technology improves, that will be better. However, what we encounter is the family comes to us, gets referred, there is a sudden unexplained death. Can you help the family to understand this? Is this genetic? Is it inherited? Will this happen to the other members of the family? The next thing we will ask is there any DNA that we can test on the deceased? And almost invariably, it's not available, and the body is no longer available.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Are there others in support?
Just briefly, Gary Cooper, I am the neighbor of Mrs. Winchell, and she asked me if I would help to move this bill forward, and I've worked with Mr. Cooley for the last several years. I think it's the right thing to do, so I'm offering my support in any help that I can offer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there speakers in opposition to the bill? Please come forward. We have to make just.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Danielle Sanchez on behalf of the California State Coroners Association, regrettably in opposition today. I want to begin my comments by sending my sympathies and condolences to Nico's family. This is certainly not a position that I or we wish to be in. And we have been in conversations with Assemblymember Cooley's office when the bill in 2014 was brought forward, and we continue those now. And so I know this is a difficult conversation. And for the coroners, we're really approaching this from kind of an operational perspective. We are charged with the unbiased scientific death investigation, and we really have to look at it from that focal point. The death of a child is always our highest priority cases. The difficulty with this bill is codifying sudden unexplained death in childhood, essentially creates it as a syndrome. And by creating it as a syndrome, it kind of intersects with the work that we do with the World Health Organization and the ICD-10 code, which we have to code the death certificates. There is no current code for the sudden unexplained death in childhood as currently written into this bill. And so by putting it as a syndrome, it really puts us at odds with the operational classifications that we are supposed to do with the ICD-10 code. We understand that it seems fairly innocuous to put this definition into statute, but it does create procedural problems for us going forward based on kind of the scientific work that we are charged to do. So we look forward to continuing conversations on this. We know it's an important issue, but respectfully and regrettably, we're in opposition today.
Thank you. Are there others in opposition? Seeing and hearing none, are there comments or questions from members of the committee? Senator Leno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assemblyman Cooley, I voted for this a couple years ago. It came through a health committee, I think. How is it that it's now in public safety? What changes have you made, and have you been able to address the governor's veto concern?
Senator, I'm not quite sure why the difference in bill assignment, or bill referral, what committee we came to. The bill remains very narrow. I would say that's sort of where I opened. I would actually disagree with the characterization of this as describing a syndrome. The bill itself reads, sudden unexplained death in childhood means the sudden death of a child 1 year of age or older, but under 18 years of age, that is unexplained by the history of the child and where a thorough postmortem examination fails to demonstrate an adequate cause of death. So this describes a circumstance. Someone died, inexplicable, doing due diligence. My opening was to point out that the Congress has adopted, as of December 18, 2014, so after the veto, the Data Enhancement Awareness Act, Sudden Unexpected Death Data Enhancement and Awareness Act. The National Institutes of Health, the CDC, are moving forward with collecting this data. So there's a tremendous movement at the national level under federal law and at our national health organizations seeking to collect data on the particular circumstance here. So I would say this bill is not defining a syndrome, but it is saying when you have this sort of fact pattern, that this is the moment that someone should tell the parents, get a tissue sample. And as I explained in my opening, it is not simply a national sort of thing, but here in California, in San Francisco, Parnassus Heights, at UC, they are the repository. And they're doing that on behalf of the State Department of Public Health. So to me, I would just say that I'm bringing the bill back because this is, gathering data on this is something that is a rising topic of importance. We see at the national level, we see our own public health, we see our UC, and the bill does not use the terminology of symptom or syndrome. It's just describing a circumstance. And from a public policy standpoint, to advise parents in this circumstance of the advisability of getting tissue, I don't think is too great a burden.
How did you successfully manage an act of Congress? Brilliant. How did you do it?
And so timely after the
Any
veto.
act of Congress. Yeah.
I move the bill.
Okay. The bill has been moved. Senator Stone, did you have your light is on.
Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Would you like to close?
Well, I just thank you for your time and consideration. As I do say, I am mindful of that veto, but I will present to the governor, as I've presented to you, that significant changes happen in this area, that there's increasing scrutiny, and at the time of, going back to 2014, California was one of the first 2 states to get into this registry program and to be so designated. And that was not the case when it was vetoed. So it was a very different landscape when he vetoed this bill the first time.
Thank you. And I did believe that the geneticist from Kaiser said there is a code.
There is a code.
Yeah.
There is. I mean, this
So,
happens quite frequently,
okay.
and there has to be a code, and there is a
Thank you, thank you. I just wanted to
Thank you for that
confirm that and make
clarification,
sure
Madam
that I
Chair.
had heard that correctly, because I would think that would play into
Yeah.
the concerns.
Senator, there's a
Okay.
witness. If you haven't recognized the motion, apparently there's one more witness who would like to speak, standing up there.
Well, I
So I
did
request an aye vote.
recognize the motion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there an interest? You would
Yes, I'm sorry, I missed the opportunity to speak in favor of this. I am Earl Heel of Vacaville, grandfather of the late Nico Winchell. I thank you for the opportunity to speak in behalf of Nico and other future potential victims of this disease. We're only asking a minor thing of the coroner to take the DNA-rich material for medical research. Hopefully researchers can find an answer to this and avoid the problem we've all faced 3 years after Nico's passage. We don't know why, but worse are the thousands in the future that we'll never know until we do proper research. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I would like to thank Nico's mother and you, the family, for staying with it, for being here today and telling the story. It's a powerful one, and thank you to the author.
Thank you.
Please read the roll.
Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Anderson.
Aye.
Anderson, aye. Glazer.
Aye.
Glazer, aye. Leno.
Aye.
Leno, aye. Lou. Lou, aye. Monning.
Aye.
Monning, aye. Stone. Stone, aye.
That bill passes.
Thank you very much.
Bill, when we have everybody here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.